You have to be willing to hurt so that the other person beside you doesn't have to. And if you make people better, they make you better. I had a great conversation with Jason Vokey from Foundations Inc. in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Now, Jason started his career at Formations sweeping floors right at the very beginning, and now he's the director in the company. He fully invests himself in everything that he does. We talked about the power of mentorship, coaching, the importance of family over work. Now, Jason just reminded us that work should not only be about just the only top priority. I truly enjoyed my conversation with Jason. I'm sure that you will as well. My name is Warren Barry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions. Get ready to take a deep dive on the Better the Pond podcast with my guest, Jason Vokey. All right, so Jason Vokey from Foundations Inc. You're all the way up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and you were the recipient of the illustrious James Pond Award from your Tech Canada meeting. So we'll give Kevin Brown a little shout out. I think that was your last meeting for your tech group, and in that day, I saw you. Do incredible things. You said incredible, very, very smart things. You were very challenging, very engaging, and super fun, and thus the winner of the James Pond Award. So Jason Vokey, I am absolutely ecstatic to have you on the Better the Pond podcast.
Well, thank you, Warren. I'm excited to be here.
So you're the director of sales of Foundations Inc. And before we get into all about you and who you are as a person, tell me about the company. What do you guys do?
Well, Formation's founded in 1991. We're a decorative surfaces distributor. So we service the commercial, institutional, residential millwork companies across Western Canada. Um, Really, it's bring it in bulk, break it down, sell it out piecemeal if we have to. We do larger shipments to some bigger manufacturers and some direct shipments. But ultimately, what we're selling is decorative surfaces for interior millwork. So, when you walk through a house, anything that's fixed to the wall that is part of what you would, almost call furniture, which kitchen cabinetry, could be tabletops, it could be vanities, it could be a dressing room wardrobe for residential, it could be storefront fixtures. A good example might be, West Edmonton Mall. We do a lot of the commercial millwork material supply for one of the bigger ones we did recently. Last year was Gucci to outfit the store. So basically, it's furniture that's usually fixed in a location. We do vertical surfaces as well, wall paneling, things like that. So it is very interesting. Basically, anywhere that you go through somebody's home, hotel, restaurant, we basically have some type of material or some interest in what goes into those places. So, and
Very cool.
most people never heard of us. So it's generally an interesting conversation. A lot of people think we sell wood. We don't just sell wood. So
That's cool. So both in the residential market as well as the commercial market, and yeah, I would assume that most people when they get kitchen cabinets done, they probably don't think of you, right? They think the person who's actually going to build them and install them. That'd be the people they would talk to.
yeah, we're all B2B. We don't do any advertising to consumers. We recently have, in the past few years, started a manufacturing division in our company. We are starting to make cabinetry door components,
Hmm.
but still, it's all B2B. We work with, some of the biggest, best, brightest companies that are supplying kitchen cabinetry. Another big facet of what we do, I just quickly mentioned there, is institutional work,
Hmm.
hospitals, schools. It's a big part of our business, especially in Alberta. We're constantly growing population-wise, and definitely in BC, multifamily, larger condominium complexes, towers, things like that. So,
Very cool. Well, we know you have offices in Langley, you're in Calgary, you're in Saskatoon, Winnipeg, and right here in the Queen City of Regina, Saskatchewan. You guys are here as well.
yeah, we're well distributed across Western Canada.
So, in the podcast, two podcasts prior, I was going to ask you this earlier, but I also had Tara Proscu, which is from Town and Country
Town and country.
Cabinets. Yeah, and so they're out in Edmonton, and then of course a shout out to Stan Pauls, my good friend. I call him the Fifth Hammer. We'll give him a shout out. And he's from Decor Cabinets, and I mean, they're a massive producer and
Just
of
outside of
cabinets.
Winnipeg. Yeah,
Yeah, out of Winnipeg. So you guys supply them product as well?
we do. Yeah.
Nice. So I got so now see we should call this like the cabinet podcast or something like that. I love it. So here's a question for you. I mean, when people, someone's a cabinet builder or a commercial enterprise that is looking for your product, why should they come to you? Why should they come to Foundations?
So Formation does it a little bit differently than some of our competitors. We have a pretty high onus on our A&D representation. We have a sales force that works with manufacturers, and we have a sales force that actually works with architects and designers to get our products spec'd into larger commercial or residential projects. So we kind of take care of the full supply chain there. We're educating architects and designers on our products, finding a right fit, helping them write the specification, and then basically tracking that right to fruition. Since we do that, we can get ahead of a lot of material demands, especially through COVID. That was a tough one
Hmm.
for a lot of distribution companies. But because we were so engaged in the market, we were able to get in front of a lot of these materials that can take upwards to 8 weeks to procure for our team. One of the things that we see happening more in the building industry is project delays, and then these almost like shotgun starts where out of the blue it's like, okay, we're firing this thing up after 6 months of constant delays, and that puts a lot of pressure on the supply chain. So we do like to get involved. So for formation side, if you asked our customers, I think they'd say customer service is what sets us apart. And really, I mean, distribution isn't that complicated, but it is in a sense that we have to be involved in all levels. And if we are, which is something that we pride ourselves on, we're basically able to cut that order and get you the material on time at a good price, um, which is the battle. That is all we do in
Hmm.
terms of distribution. But it's a lot more complicated in terms of investment and being involved in the market and the community in all aspects of the project.
Is a lot of your product coming from Canada, US, global? Where does the bulk of your product come from?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 40% Canada, 40% US, and 20% broken up between China,
Mhm.
Turkey, out of the Baltic region. We do import some products from China. They are very price aggressive. They go into a lot of our large institutional projects. It is something that we've tried to fight against for many years. And we're building a Canadian hospital, with Canadian tax dollars, and we're basically, selling Chinese product in there. But it is price competitive. It is good product. We do have a couple of our brands that we developed with partners out of China. But we do pride ourselves on Canadian made. Um, we carry a high pressure laminate, which is a very wear resistant surface. It's a pretty well known brand name for mica. Uh, we pride ourselves that it's the only Canadian made high pressure laminate on the market. And it's definitely a interest for a lot of our um, architects and designers to spec Canadian products. Uh, but the realization is often that they're not as price competitive as importing products.
Right. No, but it's nice to see that. You mean that you're, supporting Canadian product and keep business here in Canada. So nice to see.
For sure.
All right. So now that we got, understand what formations is all about, let's find out what Jason Vokey is all about. So, So what got you from being a gosling? So this means like where were you hatched? Where did you begin life? Right? To the time that you left the nest. And the life leaving the nest is when you got out on your own. Now, as I say to people, either you got kicked out of the nest and said, "By the way, Jason, go fly. I hope it works out for you," or you just said, "You know what? I'm out of here. I'm gonna run my own show." So I'd love to hear about that. To where you are as director of sales with Foundations. So, Jason Vokey, what is your backstory? Let's go back to the very beginning.
So I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and but I was raised in Edmonton.
Oh,
Moved here at a young age. My dad took a job here. We moved the family from Vancouver, which is a little bit of a story in itself because our family didn't have immediate we didn't have extended family close to us.
hmm,
My dad's family is out of the Toronto area. My mother's family is out of Vancouver. So it was a little bit. It is part of the story that we didn't have that extended family early on in life. I'm a middle child, so that's definitely part of the equation. Um, I have an older sister, younger brother. Big sports family. We grew up, sports was the focus. Hockey and soccer pretty much dominated everybody's time. Dad heavily involved in coaching, mom heavily involved. Brother and sister played soccer, hockey. I played hockey. As far as me and my development, I was very focused on hockey right through high school. I don't know if my world was bigger than the community that I lived in. Um, my dad just lived and breathed it. Um, he was at every practice, every game. Family was at every practice, every game. Um, and it wasn't until I departed high school that I realized that there was a big city that we lived in, and that city was in a province, and that province in a country, and it really kind of blew my mind just how narrow focused the
hmm,
first 18 years of my life had been around one sport, I guess. Um, but from formation standpoint, growing up 18, I stopped playing hockey for different reasons. One of them physical. I end up later, about 10 years later, having to get both my hips replaced. But up
really?
until that point, yeah, up until that point, of getting the actual surgery at a fairly young age, there was all kinds of problems, back pain, joint pain, things like that, that kind of prevented me from going any further with the hockey career. Um, and I kind of landed with coaching. And as I was coaching with my dad, we were coaching REM 15, so 15, 16-year olds, and then eventually midget AAA. I met who is now the owner of Formations, Tyler Hill. We coached together. So that's kind of my intro
Hmm,
into formations. My dad telling me to go get a job and telling Tyler to get me one. So I started in the warehouse. I swept for the first probably couple months. I always come from a high level of playing hockey and working hard. It was probably a few months into it that I started in the warehouse, actually pulling orders. Um, Probably couple years before I was the foreman in the warehouse, which was a little bit awkward being 20 years old and basically commanding the crew of guys that are twice my age. I kind of jumped right from that right into outside sales
hmm.
with formations, which is a kind of an unusual jump, but I've always been a personal guy, always been pretty positive, kind of well spoken. Went out on the road and as a 20-year-old, maybe 22, sorry, at this point, and did wonderful things, which was unexpected by a lot of people. Um, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the 7 or 8 years that I was a salesperson, I found a couple $1 million a year of growth every year for the company, and it wasn't long before people started asking, well, what am I doing out there that's different? And why aren't we seeing that from our other salespeople? And at a young age, I was in a director position, um, which also was very challenging when you're a young guy in the industry, and it wasn't something I was not used to, being the foreman and managing that. But this was definitely a different role. Probably wasn't prepared for it or mature enough for it at the age. But it was a great experience, and I got to do a lot of great things in the company that we still hold value in today. Just innovating, our processes. At the time, I think that this might be for some of the younger people than I might be hard to believe, but we weren't using computers every day. We were certainly sending emails, but the thought of an ERP system was it was new. It was groundbreaking stuff. The thought of price matrices and customer relationship management was earth shaking. So I mean, I was fortunate in being a part of the start of that process for our company, and what really kind of took off to be the norm nowadays in sales. So I got an early introductory into that. Did go through some schooling to help the company grow, and I found myself actually just recently, actually in a business development role, director of business development here.
Hmm.
I mean, very recent in the last few weeks here. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, and that's kind of my story, my progression through. Really, it was performance. It definitely was a story of high performance and getting opportunities that I likely wasn't ready for, and there was a lot of growth through failure. But I find myself here today, and definitely a much better person than the guy who started in the company 18 years ago here. So.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack there.
No, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
so let me just, I just like, if you don't mind, I'll just take you back a little bit. It sound like it's funny you talk about your dad coaching and there every game and every practice and whatnot. That was my life. I mean, I grew up playing hockey too. In fact, I'm playing this afternoon, so I'm still playing. But I coached my son through all of hockey and all of baseball, so I understand that whole world. Um, what did your dad do for a living?
He was actually in sales.
He was in sales.
Spent a large part in Western Canadian or regional manager roles, vice president roles for various companies like Bombardier, Rent-Town, traveled quite a bit, and still found time to make it to every practice. I mean, I'm pretty sure practice was the first thing on his schedule around travel. But yeah, he had a pretty heavy sales career. Um, Kind of similar actually to the role that I'm in right now currently.
Yeah. That's what I was hearing. I'm like, a little bit of chip off the old block here. The apple doesn't fall far.
It's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but it fell far enough. We are very different people. But my dad was big on kind of taking hockey as a analogy for business. Still some of the analogies I use today. Teamwork and leadership were his messages to me on a daily basis. I think I captained every hockey team I've played for. Um, I mean, partly and not because of popularity with my fellow players, but just the leadership experience of setting the standard, lead by example. We're always really big with him, and he carried that in business, and I carry that in business too.
I was just going to ask you that. So it's interesting. I was actually going to ask you if you were captain of your teams that you're on, and you already answered that question already. I bet I'm going to guess here because I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to make an assumption that you were a centerman.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I figured so. Um, and if you think of all the things your dad taught you, if you were going to kind of summarize it or break it down to maybe the one lesson that your dad really sort of imparted on you, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I think some of these high level lessons that you learn from your parents, you don't learn all at once. It's very organic how they eventually come to you. If I was going to pick one of them, I'd probably be forced to mention two, but I think the one I take with me every day, and they go together. So I will do two, but there's one that stands out is my dad was very big on taking interest in other people. Um, and it's hard to explain what he meant by that. But what I think what he was trying to get me on earlier in life that I use today is, you know, try to find common ground with people, common interests,
Mm,
take an interest in what they're doing personally. We're all here to play hockey or we're all here to work, but there's people behind these positions, and great people, great stories. Certainly, people that you can find some type of common ground with. Um, and that's really helped me, be able to talk to anybody and talk in a way that's very genuine and empathetic towards other people. And I guess the what that led into the ultimately the lesson that had been imparted on me, the wisdom is, he talked a lot about teams and what it means to be a team. And I'll never forget, and I can't remember the exact words. I wish I could play back the clock and hear them, but it goes something like, you have to be willing to hurt so the person next to you doesn't have to. And
oh,
if that team is truly functioning well, um, you do that without any need for compensation. You do that in a way that is compassionate, and you don't expect anything in return, but you get it. And any team that I've ever tried to be on, I've always tried to be that person that shows that vulnerability first, and genuinely you get it. Or generally, you get it back, and you
mm,
get that reciprocation. But he's taught me to kind of show that vulnerability and take that step to build those relationships with people.
wow, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of the secret sauce, I guess, that's helped me get to where I am right now. And I'm sure there's lots of lessons my dad wish he didn't teach me. But that's certainly one that's always stuck with me, and it's always helped me get the most out of the friendships that I have, and make meaningful friendships with people, and really make people feel like they're part of a team.
Yeah, that's very cool. What about your mom? What do you think is some of the wisdom that your number one thing that your mom sort of taught you along your journey?
You know what? I didn't see my mom very often growing up. I We all lived in the same house.
Yep.
So three children. My mom was heavy into soccer. My sister, my brother, and my dad, with more with me with hockey. Playing higher level hockey, I was at the rink 5 days a week, and if I wasn't, on the rink, I was at the outdoor rink for most of the time. Um, I didn't see my mom very often as a kid. She was mostly shuttling my brother and sister to their soccer games and coaching them, and kind of spent a lot of time with them. Um, the wisdom that she gave to me is probably the maternal wisdom, that's been really a part of me, deeply a part of me, is just the meaning of family. And we she's full-blooded Italian, and Vokey's not an Italian last name. It's very Scottish. And So when people hear that I grew up in Italian culture, so my mom was the dominant culture growing up in our household, they don't really relate Vokey with being Italian. And I certainly don't look very Italian.
No.
Uh, so a very passionate culture, very passionate people with family,
Mhm.
lots of arguments, lots of openness in sharing criticism and perspective. It's very different from what I would say is the common Canadian culture because we are a mixed ethnicity, but um, it is one of the deepest things that will stay with me and maybe not learned as more organically over the years is, my mom picked up the phone and called her siblings weekly,
Oh.
her mother, 2, 3 times a week. She was very close with them, even through heated discussions and getting involved, like true Italians do, probably too much
Mhm.
in other people's affairs. She taught me that you work through that stuff. It's better to get it out there and to discuss it and to work through it than it is to hold it back and get to a point where you really build resentment for people. And I've really taken that on, especially in the last few years. Is if I do have an issue or I see an issue, I bring it forward. And it is confrontational sometimes, but letting things fester, it ruins both people. And it's a lesson that I've learned from her, and I've honed it over the years so that it's not so confrontational. But it's certainly something that I think I don't see very commonly in business, especially when dealing with customers.
Mhm.
It's something that it's been said many times. I have lots of customers that over the years they bought from me, and I've heard things like, sometimes I really don't like that guy, but man, I give him every order. And it's partly because we if it's truly a partnership, then you should be able to stand up for keeping things on equal terms. And too often in our business, we see the opposite, where the customer is dictating a lot of what you are willing to do to service that company. And it should be a partnership, and there should be equal footing on both entities, and it should be, mutually beneficial. And I think it's helped me build a lot of long-term relationships in business. That simple thing of, coming from an Italian culture with my mom and
Mhm.
being able to talk about things and not skirting around issues.
That's cool. One of the things that I talk about when I'm working with companies is, uh, you know, do you want to talk to or do you want to talk about? Right. And it's way easier to talk about than it is to talk to.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Right. But when you talk to, you actually address what you're actually, that you're trying to actually solve a problem, work towards a goal. Talking about just sits and spins, right? And that's when people start telling stories, and that's where resentments get built up. And well, that's not what I heard, that's not what I thought, and right, and that's where it gets messy. So that's an interesting message from your mom that, talk to, move forward.
yeah.
That's very cool. I got one last question for you. Just understanding, what it's like to. I mean, I never played high level hockey. I personally didn't want to. I mean, I sort of had my chances, but I never really. That's something that I wanted. I wanted to go play hockey because I loved the game, not because I wanted to become high level. But understanding what it takes, right? Being on the ice 5 days a week, if not, being at the outdoor rink. And I mean, I live that too. But looking back, I'm going to make an assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, just by your story, is that, you really didn't, as a teenager, you didn't really work. As far as work went, you worked at hockey. Am I making a correct assumption?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we all my siblings played high level sports. there's a lot of preparation that goes into that people aren't aware of. Preparation before practices, preparation after practices. I mean, it's not a 1 hour ice slot. It's a 3 hour round trip every single day when you're really thinking about how much time you're committing to a sport like that.
So looking back on that time in your life, of course, and you said you had your hips replaced at a very young age. It's incredible. Would you do it again?
You know what? If I were to go back and I was a little bit younger, I would have broadened my interests. That's what I would have done. I mean, there's no perfect world. I think I'm a combination of every event and continue to grow with everything that happens in the environment around me. If I were to go back, I would certainly tell myself at maybe the age of 12 that there is other things in life and a lot of interests out there. I'm just later in life as I found out, I'm a person that's broadly talented. In more than one facet. I may not be exceptional at anything, but I'm certainly great at a multitude of things.
Hmm.
Especially from a creative side. I try to think a little bit before this podcast of just some of the interests that I have, and they range everywhere from, uh, you know, uh, sketching to full on canvas painting to gardening to tractor maintenance to sales and mentorship to hockey. And I mean, I got a pretty broad portfolio later in life of interests. And I think coming out of high school at 18 years old and really thinking that the southwest of Edmonton was the world, says a lot about the need for younger people to really get involved um, in more than just one sport or more than one interest.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I'm going to get us moving on here. So, um, what's the number one thing, and it can be positive or negative, that's happened to you that has ruffled your feathers? Like, and how did you respond to it?
Um, what for me, I did have well, I got a couple. I mean, certainly from a personal side, having total hip construction reconstruction, that was a tough one.
Mhm.
There was many years leading up to that. Eventually, getting to the point where I'm getting around with a walker before the surgery, but many years up to that of walking with a cane and not being able to enjoy life very much at a young age. From basically 26 onward. That was tough. That was tough in a lot of different ways. Physically and mentally. From a professional standpoint, I was in a director position very young. It was kind of one of those, he's done things that nobody's ever done. Let's get him to, you know, let's get him to manage people. And taking me from a something that took me years to really kind of craft into being exposed to a larger part of the company and especially from a high level, jumping from a warehouse into a sales role and then from a sales role into a executive role at 27 it was a lot. I would say that the wisdom wasn't quite there at that point. Ended up going back into a sales manager role at the branch, um, and a lot of that was, in my control. Um, if I had that wisdom of how to handle certain situations, um, how I responded to that setback was I doubled down on how hard I worked and in development, personal development, business development, and basically took a branch that did see a decline after my departure, and made it the most profitable branch in the company, um, and ultimately rewarding by getting back into a executive position, and more to follow afterwards, in progress. But it was a major setback. I think experience plays a lot into some of these more senior level positions. I've always seen myself as a talented person that works really hard, but some of it has to happen organically. You have to, um, if you're a very dedicated, strong-willed person, um, and you have that, conation that I have, where you want to get things done, you really do have to gain those years of experience in dealing with people, and understand that not everybody thinks the way that you do. Um, and I think getting married at that point and having children, I think that shapes somebody, and then you start really understanding that. Certainly with mentorship, that's a big help. But yeah, that's my biggest setback. I did have an early career setback in coming out of a director position, um, that I frankly wasn't ready for. And yeah, I guess I would say maximum effort from that point on. This is how I was taught to get around every obstacle.
Mm,
So
there you go. So here's a question for you. I'm just sort of sitting back in this whole thing of at such a young age of having total hip replacement that it's just said you've stuck me there. Um, when you look back at it, do you think, Jen, and the reason I'm asking this question is that you said earlier about, you've got so much interest in so many varied things, but yet your hockey career puts you into one thing, yet you've got all this interests that are outside of it. So if you look at having the hip replacements that you had and the surgery at the time when you had it, when you look at it now, did that happen to you or did it happen for you?
it's a good, I'd have to process that question here for a few minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. My son's in hockey right now. He's in U7. I too am coaching him. I got practice tonight. I think the approach that I'm taking with him is very sensitive in what's happened to me in my life experience. Did it happen to me, these hip replacements? Yes. I mean, did I know, at the time, being at a young age, that the damage I was doing playing that much hockey? No. I
Mhm.
mean, should my father have stepped in at some point? Maybe. Did he know? I don't know. And I really don't harbor any of that. So it did happen to me. I mean, probably there's a mix of that, but what you kind of really have to understand is it really did happen for me, because no matter what it is I do, my personality type is to do it. I mean, there's everybody always laughs at me here at they make fun of me a little bit. They say I only have one speed. They say
Yeah.
it's 10 or 11.
11.
11. But that's not true. It really isn't. I got two speeds. It's 11 and 0. So, um, I mean, did it happen for me a little bit? I did it. I did it to myself. I mean,
Mm,
no matter what I was going to do, I'm just the personality type that I'm in 100%, and I'm going to give it everything I got. So,
mm,
but I am very cautious with my son growing up playing hockey here. It is on my radar to make sure that his health comes first, and that he's not just playing hockey. It's not going to happen. So he's got to branch out and explore different avenues. And I hope he meets different people.
mhm,
And I think that was a disadvantage that I had coming out of hockey at the age I did before I saw the world. Was I was used to one very particular type of person,
mhm,
that were very similar to myself. And when I, eventually learned just how many different types of people there are out there, and how to communicate with them effectively, I mean, I wish that from a younger age that would have happened, and it didn't, unfortunately. So
mhm. So maybe the hip replacements happened for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So as you know, when I was speaking there to your tech group, again, shout out to Tech Canada, but the geese fly with 71% more efficiency when flying in the V formation, which you already know, you're a resident gooseologist. So um, how do you feel? And I know this is obviously this is a value of formations as well, but talk about team. What do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in that V formation, Jason?
Um, it's not, it's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts in a team. I mean, the right people is obviously the biggest challenge. The right fitting people, a good mix of people. I really focus on engagement. If you really want to, if you got 6, 7 members on your team and you're trying to get them to pull in the same direction, I mean, the first thing you got to make sure is that everybody's engaged. I mean, if they're not engaged, they don't know the vision, they don't know, where we're taking this thing, they don't know their role. I mean, they can't play a part in benefiting the team. So, I mean, for me, engagement's a big one, and motivation. Um, we all got shit happening in our lives. We're real people. Coming to work, and again, I say this a little bit cold-handedly. But work shouldn't be your priority. It shouldn't be your driver. And I know some people will disagree with me on that. But my family comes first, and I think when push comes to shoves, the majority of people are going to pick their family, over their career, and um, and motivation becomes a huge issue within a team. Um, because you're dealing with individuals that are going through life and have setbacks personally, and getting them to give you their output, it's challenging at times, and you really have to be on a personal level with people and encourage them to be vulnerable and share with the team what they're going through, from a personal level, for people to understand how they're going to contribute. And it kind of goes back to my dad with the hurt so that your teammate doesn't have to. And there's always going to be times when people need to be picked up, and that's what the team's for. And if you can get that feeling, that people truly do have your back, and that they'll pick you up when you're down, and they know that you'll do the same for them, I think that's getting you on the right track, and that's probably the biggest hurdle that you could overcome.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I find really interesting when you said there. There's three things. Number one, I just as we go through this interview, the more and more we talk, the more humanitarian side of you I see coming out. So you're a real true humanitarian who really actually authentically cares about people. That's very obvious. So I kudos on that piece. One of the things he said is about, that life, or work doesn't have to be the priority. And my daughter is now living in France, and she absolutely loves it there, but she keeps reminding me, she says, Dad, we actually work to live. We don't live to work. And it's a very different culture. And she goes, I want to work to live, so I don't have to live to work. And so it was quite interesting to hear her, at her age, of understanding that sort of that concept, and that sort of goes back to what you were saying, and the other thing too, I was going to say that just it reminded me of what your dad was said. One of the things your dad taught you about being vulnerable and be able to show that vulnerability, which allows other people to kind of do the same, because at the end of the day, yes, like we're people, right? And people have, wherever there's people problems, right? And so I always look at sometimes culture and saying, have we got a I got your back culture, or is it a watch your back culture?
Yeah.
And very very clearly you have a I got your back culture at formations, which obviously you put into place.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I've always tried to put that to words, but It continues to come up. It's funny, you say it's culture, and I think it's true, is, you have to constantly work on culture. But it's amazing, the amount of reinforcement and effort you have to put into to that. It never ends. It's a continuous cycle of trying to guide people to work together. Collaboration um, isn't natural for a lot of people. And certainly, if you want a high performing team, it doesn't need to be, but it should be.
Right.
And it's definitely a goal that you have to constantly work on and improve.
Yeah, I always say if you think you've got your culture figured out, you're already going backwards.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm on
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It never ends. It never ends. That's awesome. Thank you. So look at formations and whether it's going to be as an organization or you, Jason, yourself. What are you doing to better the pond? And I know one thing just to lead off on this is that you've done, formations I'm involved in the Meyer Center for Autism and a charity golf tournament. So you've done that in the past and try to make the world a better place. And what else? What else have you got going personally and with formations? What are you doing to better the pond?
Um, for formation side, I've always been the type of guy that believes if you make people better, they'll make you better.
Mm,
Uh, so I mean, from an everyday standpoint, it's I try to carry that positivity around with me everywhere. Positive, move forward, help people get past their issues. I mean, a lot of people like to call that oh my gosh, the word servitude or
servant leadership.
servant leadership. Um, I just call it being a good person, being kind. Our family motto is it's funny, I actually heard it in a Disney movie here recently. I won't mention which one, but it's have courage and be kind. I mean, that's what I preach to my kids. Um, Coaching for me is big because it's part of the community. I mean, I get to speak to 18 7-year-olds on a weekly basis and help shape who they are. And I mean, if you're talking about the pond, I mean, I hope we're talking about the next generation that's going to live in it.
Mhm.
And I mean, for me, mentorship for children is probably my focus for 15% of my week and my time commitment. So it's something that I take pride in is if you can get a child to feel like they're part of a community, um, that's something that they can carry with them and to preach to others. So that's the ripples in the pond for me. I thoroughly enjoy, and I see why my dad had so much enjoyment in
Mhm.
coaching younger kids, and that's definitely deeply instilled in me.
Yeah, I think that I can just speak on my own experience. I think it's some of the things that never leave you. I still remember some of the kids that I coached when they were, 3, 4, 5, or U7, U8, U10, like, and some of the kids who really, really struggled then, right? And you kind of watch them flourish along the way, and and then obviously you see them now, and they're like, "Hey, coach," like it's so fascinating the things that you keep back to, and you hang on to those memories because of the sort of the ripples that you've sort of created along the way. It's a reward in and of itself, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I encourage other people to think about their own children. I mean, it's they're kind of images of you going
Mhm.
to school and interacting in society. So I couldn't think of a more important humanitarian mission in life than to raise your children to a high caliber of um, social ability and care for other people.
Love it. All right. So, what's one lesson that you have learned along your journey And you've made your way through here. So, what's one thing that you've learned along the way that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Um, I think the most important lesson I've learned in, my short time on this earth is not everybody thinks like you. Um, I say that because if you truly hold that perspective, I mean, you're capable of stepping outside of yourself for a minute and really trying to hear the words that you're trying to communicate and understand if people truly, see clarity in what you're saying. And it's it's a lesson that I've constantly have to remind myself before I go to meet anybody is, you are you, and this is what you're likely to react to, and this is how you need to proceed, and this is this person, and you need to be sensitive and cognizant of these factors. And I don't know if you can do that early in life. I think it takes, like I said, some real life experience to learn how to do this effectively. But I mean, essentially, if you're able to step outside yourself and see yourself from an open perspective, I mean, you're going to do great things, being able to manage other people. And I mean, never forget that you may be an entrepreneur and you're likely driven and you're likely motivated and you're likely somebody that wants to work at a fast pace. But I mean, you got to slow down because the people that you're leading that are eventually going to, make you profitable, they probably don't think the same way that you do. And that's something I actually took out of our tech meeting with you is, from a vulnerability standpoint is, there no right or wrong way to think about the world and the people, and you just have to understand that everybody's different, and you've got to come into that conversation knowing that they're likely not thinking the same things that you're thinking. So
Absolutely. That's one of the things I tell people is say that, from in a Canadian standpoint is that, we all speak English, but we all talk a different language.
yeah.
We all see the world through our own lens. So fantastic. I love that. Thank you. I got one last question for you. And that question is, Jason Vokey, if you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Yeah, well, I'd have a lot to say if everybody was listening to me. Holy, I don't think I'll ever be in that position. But I yeah, I mean, I don't often think of myself as a humanitarian, but what the truth is, I mean, this world that we live in here today, I mean, it scares me a little bit for my children
Mm,
and what's going on in the world. And from a society standpoint, I mean, it's easy to say, hey, let's all just get along. Um, I think it'd be a harder thing to accomplish on a global scale. Obviously, it's never happened before, but I would say, you know, don't try to change the world. Worry, focus on your family.
hmm,
Focus on making the impact on the people around you. And I mean, if we all concentrated on making those relationships stronger and devoting the time to strengthen those relationships, I mean, these networks are going to organically happen. And I think we spend too much time worrying about what's going on in the world as opposed to what's in our own backyard and
hmm,
especially within our own household. So my words of wisdom to the world wouldn't be to change something so ambitious as world peace or a brotherhood of man as much as it would be to concentrate on your own children and the children around you. And you can't change this generation, but you might be able to change the next.
Hmm. That is the first time I've ever heard an answer like that. I love it.
There you go.
Great. It's funny you say you don't see yourself as much as a humanitarian, and that's a very different side that I see from this side of the camera. Just everything you say shows me that that you are a true humanitarian and that you really do care. And you talk about mentorship and people and leading the way. So to me, those there, you may not say it, but I sure just give you that feedback. I sure see something different.
Thanks, Mark.
So. All right. Well, there we had it. We had a great time with Jason Vokey, Foundations Inc. And I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your stories. I want to thank you for being so amazing in the tech group and winning the James Pond Award. That's why we're here today. If people want to find you, Jason, where do they go?
Oh, for me personally, I am on LinkedIn. For me, we're on the website, formations.ca. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, Warren. I'm not actually very big on social media,
Okay.
to be honest with you. So this is a little bit outside my comfort zone. I'm pretty introverted person, but yeah, I love meeting new people. LinkedIn probably the best way to reach out to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll get that link out there in the show notes so that if somebody does want to have a conversation with you, or whether it's be personally meeting new friends or to do business with you and formations, we'll get that out there so that they have a place to go.
yeah, for
Sound
sure.
good? All right. Well, thank you so much, Jason. There you have it. A great podcast. I'm leaving this actually conversation very inspired actually by you. So we had a great time with Jason Vokey, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond because we're better together. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks, Warren.